Alright everyone, I am back with another short sermon, and I hope you're ready this time. Today is Saturday, February 27th, 2021, and as you know, I've been talking about the Ten Commandments, which are very important, and right now, I will talk about the seventh commandment. Turn to the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verse 14, and it says here, "Do not commit adultery." Now, this is the seventh commandment, so do not murder is more important than the seventh commandment, but they're right next to each other because they have to do with our relationships with people. Commandments 5, 6, and 7. Now, what is adultery? Well, if you break the word up, you will see that the first half of the word is adult, because this only refers to adults. And actually, back in the Bible, we see that a person is not considered a man until the age of 12 or 13, not 18. This is because of the age of puberty, which in this case they are considered an adult. Now, adultery, as you know, is very wrong, but it is also not showing faithful love to your spouse, which is either your husband or wife. Now, in order for this to happen, the person who is married goes off to marry someone else, and this cannot be done without a divorce, because here in America, it is illegal for someone to have more than one wife. So, the person will first have to file a divorce from his first wife and then marry someone else, which is wrong. But that is what adultery is. Now, back in Bible times, it was common for someone to have more than one wife. One example of this is Solomon. He perhaps had the most of them. He had 700 wives, to be exact. But they all turned his heart away from the Lord. And how did they do that? They set up other gods. His wives told him to worship these other gods, and Solomon fell for the trick. But God told Solomon directly not to go after other gods, and he still did. In spite of Solomon's great wisdom and understanding, he still went after them. Solomon knew more than anyone else did in his time or after him. So even if someone knows all of the consequences to something wrong, they can still do it anyway. You know, they do not have to have a good reason for it. Now, another example of this is with King David, when he committed adultery with Bathsheba. Plus, he also committed murder. But still, King David, he was a good king in spite of his act. Now, in the relationship between a couple, the husband is supposed to be over the wife, just as Christ is the head over the church. Because the Christ is the husband, and the church is the wife, and we are the bride. Christ is the bridegroom. And so, we are supposed to get ready for the return of Christ, you know, the church is supposed to be ready, even though she does not know when the bridegroom will return, because we do not know when Christ will return. Okay, so we have to get ready. Now, Christ never got married for a good reason, because we are the church. Now, marriages are supposed to last, but sadly, they do not. In fact, according to statistics, 50% of all marriages end in divorce. That's half of them. Now, back in the 1890s, only 5% of them end in divorce. The reason why this number has 10 twice more is because the theory of evolution. Someone who knows a lot about history told me about this. In the year 1956, the Soviet Union, on the Eastern Hemisphere, released its first satellite called Sputnik to orbit the globe. And when the Americans saw this, they were like, "Oh no, we better do something about this." And so America invented its own satellite, although I do not remember its name. But for some reason, this satellite has something to do about evolution, and then evolution has something to do about divorce. Plus, the 1950s is when television and the media came out, which has to do with evolution. So, this is the reason why. Now, the Apostle Paul may have said that it is best not to get married, because it can be a distraction for someone who is in ministry, to someone who has a calling from God. However, if it is their desire to, then they probably should. If you read the Torah, you will see what happens if a man who is not married has sex with a woman who is not married, which is called fornication, which is also wrong. The book of the law says that if that happens, then he is supposed to marry her, and she becomes his wife for life, and they cannot divorce each other. There was a case with that with my grandparents. But that was the book of the law, and some people think it no longer applies to us, because that was the Old Testament. Now we have the New Testament, and people think that they still can divorce, which is wrong. Now, a couple may decide to get married, but they may also decide not to have children because they can get fixed, which means they can no longer have children voluntarily. And this is done by twisting the testicles or ovules. Anyway, so, and this is also wrong because the Bible says that whoever does this is not allowed to enter the sanctuary of God. So, and we see the promises of God, and it says, "Blessings be to you and your seed, which is your offspring." And this is the only way that people can have their name remain on the property, because I'm out of time for today, folks. And I will come back next time for the 8th commandment. But in the meantime, see you later.